I love you, compute. Hey, we're back. This is Wednesday, February 3rd, and also Thursday, February 4th, and we're going to get into learning bits and destruction and death. And there's a tree on my board. And I completely threw me off. Sorry. As we get into all of our fun things, we've been showing kids horrifying pictures of me as a small child. And let's see. Grades and B points are updated over yonder. For those of you who need to see it, it's also on Skyward. We will be going to the library, but not until after lunch towards the indie bits of class. We have to get through all the fun things first. I mean, as far as death and destruction of people can be. And then we'll go to library at the end. Those of you who are the online, we're going to get rid of you at that point. So we have a little while before we get there. And then those of you who are the red kids, you, hang on, I'm messing with my camera. You, aha, there we go, have already been. And then those of you who are virtual kids, apparently you just hate books. So don't worry about it. And that works for me. And then blah, blah, and blah. Friday e-learning. I am going to be doing the quizzy thing again. Trying to change it slightly. It is now 10 questions as opposed to 8 questions. And I made 2 of the questions about the posters that are around the room, because I think I made the last week's question a little too easy because you guys didn't have to use the poster to figure out which god was holding on to the trident. So this one I tried to make a little bit tougher. It's actually going to require you to look at the posters. The main idea being I want you to look at the posters because I want you to know where they are, to be able to look at things and stuff like that. So I will walk you through that here in a second. Again, if you've been paying attention and you've been writing the stuff down on the blue sheet, you should be fine for this quiz. My goal is that overall it should take you 10 to 15 minutes at the very most, hopefully less than that altogether. Oh, I will activate it tomorrow at 2:45 for those of you who want to get started, and it comes due again 3 o'clock on Friday, and hopefully that helps you out as far as that bit goes. If you need to get access to the postery things, which by the way, you will need to get access to the postery things unless you have some kind of a creepy memory thing, because there's going to be questions about the posters in my room, and you're not going to be in my room at 2:45 tomorrow because that would also be kind of weird and creepy. Here is how you get access to them. Find the thing that says the myth page, which is on Canvas, and then that's going to take you to the thing here, and then you find the one that says postery page, and then you click there, and then that's where you can find all the postery things. And yes, there are reflections on some of these, but it should not interfere when you guys have to go on for the quiz. And when you scroll down, there's close-up pictures where you don't have to worry about the reflection nearly as much. So my goal was to try and make it easier on you. Questions from any of that? Yeah, that. Hi, Rye. We have not talked about that yet, so just have to wait. Maybe I'll put it on the quiz to see which kids pay attention to that to make things fun. That can make you guys think, and thinking is painful. All right, so we got through Iris, and hopefully now that you guys have done your dissection in science, you all impressed Mrs. Melling by saying, look, it's a sclera. And she was like, oh my God, you're so smart. And you're like, Greek mythology. Because I'm pretty sure none of you did anything. You don't have to shake your head. No, I'm aware none of you guys tried to make my day by saying sclera. You guys all went, white part of the boggle thing. And then she was so proud of you on that one. Then we get to music and museum. Comes from what god or gods? Is correct. How many muses were there? 9. Is correct. Ooh, did we talk about who the muses worked for? Wow, those are all wrong answers, but you guys sounded confident. I'm a little proud of you on that one. Actually, they worked for Apollo, the guy over there. I didn't, some classes I mentioned, I did. It's not a big thing yet, but Apollo was sort of their boss. He is the god of creative arts and stuff like that because he liked macking on women, but that's a story that we'll get to later. And the muses worked for him. The idea was you had to have the muse inspire you in order to do your creative stuff because humans are made out of clay and dirt, which you guys get to be created next week. We're not going to get to your creation yet. And let's see, if you were wanting to have singing, beautiful, voicey things, and it was the muse doing it, not you. Same thing with a museum. That's because it was a collection of things created by a muse and not you. June comes from what god? Is correct. What was her Roman name? Is correct. Juno again. And she was known as Mrs. Zeus, girl in pink. And then the other 2 things she's in control of is correct. Marriage and babies. And why is her being god of marriage ironic? So again, why is this the one that you guys get excited about? I ask all these questions, you guys come across zombie mode. You're like, Juno, mythology, divorce, and people cheating on each other. You guys, that's the part you guys start yelling at. It's all right, trying not to judge you too much. Sticking with things that I'm assuming are going to continue to make you happy. Why is it ironic? She's the god of childbirth.
Because she likes killing the children.
Glad to see I was not failed on that one. Yes, that she enjoys the killing of babies. I mean, but then again, who doesn't? JC.
No, my dad talked to my dad on Monday, and well, I go in his office, but there's like the window, so he can go get one more of that.
Okay.
And he said that it's when the baby, and he had a fight about a car, and it was awkward.
If it helps, it wasn't awkward for me. And I think that's what's important. And yeah, I've had enough. Apparently, I quite often say things in class that parents find strange and awkward. And you don't have to nod that enthusiastically. But yeah, nice to know that it does not stop me from doing any of the things I keep doing when parents contact me like, that thing you said, that was weird. And I'm like, just buckle up, buddy, because I'm not stopping anytime soon. So why is June connected to Hera? There you go. Not baby killing. We're not trying to make JC feel any more uncomfortable than he already does. But yes, that's when we get married. I said to make JC feel uncomfortable when you raised your hand. Just making sure. We get to mind comes from Athena, whose Roman name was Minerva. And then she is the god of what two main areas?
Wisdom and war.
Is correct. And there's actually a third W we're going to find out. Wisdom, war, and weaving, but we're not there yet. And yes, we can't have war without weapons. You are correct. But that's not where we're going on that one. But yes, the wisdom, the war, and then eventually the weaving. But that's for a story we'll get to later. Why is she considered the god of wisdom?
Because she's super smart. And
By the way, why is it ironic she is the god of wisdom coming from Zeus's brain?
because she's
Just having you guys throw shade at Zeus. You are correct. The fact that he was a giant dum-dum and yet the god of wisdom is born from his head. Is it because when she was born, she took all the wisdom with her? Yeah, we'll go with that. There was definitely wisdom in there beforehand, and now it's empty. That sounds legit. Then so it becomes your thinker and your mindy bits. Then we got the last one, March, which connects to whose Roman name was?
Mars.
Well, that was a dead stop. It's a planet.
Mars. I said Mars already.
Well, apparently you didn't say it very loud. Apparently, channel your inner I like yelling, killing babies part, and I would have heard you much better. So you don't have to yell it now. I see you inhaling like you're a dragon. So Mars would be correct, which is the planet full of all the red stuff, which they've always covered in blood, connected to him. The definition of March, the original definition of March, connected to
War.
what about war?
Walking into
Sticking with our W's, we have our war walking. And then the other thing that connects to March is going to be, and why was the month connected?
Because that's when the gods would cease war on each other. No. Yeah.
It's a little bit of both, actually. They had war on each other, which caused. That's trying to give Kyra a chance, but Kyra is still choking. Yes, that gives all of the weather, the issues, and stuff like that. Nicely done. Hi, JC. I have no idea. Apparently. I'm so glad that she shared that with us. So last time yeah, September is still not March, but I wanted to check to make sure. So now we're going to get to our new learning story for today. For some of you who might already be familiar with the story, my version might be slightly different. On blue sheet thingy, I am just telling, well, here's good news and bad news. I'm giving you all the answers on that blue sheet from 1 to 60, whatever the last one is. The bad news is I'm not just going to go through and go 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's boring. And I left boring in math class. So what I'm going to do is just tell you a story. And as you listen to the story, you should be able to figure out all the answers. My goal is today, by end of class, we should get through number 11. So I'm hoping that today's story covers the first 11 answers on there. If you stop me in the middle of class and go, hey, what's number 5? The answer is you're a big noggin head and I'm going to charge you points. Because I'm not going to stop and tell you. At the end of class, sure, I can go through there and try to remind you. But I'm not going to stop telling my story just because you weren't paying attention. Hi, Jaden, what's up? That's fine. I can't control that. That's why I record the video. What's up?
So, since you were on the topic of stories when I raised,
Sounds like me. Yeah.
are you eventually gonna share mine with the class?
Oh, yeah, no.
Um,
But it was an entertaining one. I'll give you that one.
should I just email it to everyone in the class?
Yeah, that definitely.
Yes, please. I love that.
That seems like a thing that everybody would enjoy. So now back to our story. So we've already given you this first answer. We talked to. Yes and no. Mostly, I'd say 85% of it will probably be in order, but every once in a while they'll jump around. But for the most part, yes. JC.
How do we block somebody on email?
Right. So in the very beginning, with the whole story, what was the first thing to exist in Greek mythology we already know was? And what did I describe chaos as? There you go. So the story I already sort of gave you is the whole thing with chaos was the swirling ball of pudding that existed for we don't know how long it was until eventually the swirling ball of pudding got bored, as pudding does, it is pudding, and split like the giant amoeba to form the two different beings that existed. When chaos split to form the first two gods, who were those first two gods? Thank you for half of you who tried to say it the right way and the other half of you who went pure seventh grade on me. But yes, Gaia and Uranus, or Gaia and Uranus. Gaia, also known as Mother Earth, and then Uranus, known as Father Sky. So they are considered the first two gods. And in mythology, they were both gods you could speak to and locations. Mother Earth was a thing that you could jump on, boinky, 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 but she had conversations. You could talk to her. Same with Father Sky. You could communicate with him, and he was also a location. Also, Mother Earth was not shaped like a gigantic ball. That's ridiculous. Mother Earth was shaped like a plate. And so she was flat like a giant dinner plate. You could easily go off the edge of her and then fall off, or you could dig straight through her and get all the way through to the bottom, which we'll get to also. Father Sky was shaped like a gigantic bowl, not bowl, but bowl, like the thing that you have your sugar puffs in the morning. And so the sky was sitting on top of this plate. Think of like a teacup sitting on a saucer, was sort of how the sky and the earth were thought about. And they existed like this for, again, thousands of years. Things are going well. No humans exist. No gods exist except for these two. And everything is wonderful. Until one day, Mother Earth approaches Father Sky and says, oh my goodness, there's a kid trying to get into my room. Eli, I'm assuming you got kicked out because there's another Eli trying to join. Hang on, I have to deal with the fact that this is an Eli imposter. New Eli is here. All right, welcome back, new Eli. That was kind of weird and creepy. So one day, Mother Earth confronts Father Sky. She goes, hey, hon. He's like, yeah, what's up? She goes, so, okay. You know how my name is Mother Earth? He's like, uh-huh. She goes, and you're Father Sky? He goes, uh-huh. She goes, well, I'm thinking we can't go by those names. Goes, what do you mean? She goes, well, we can't be a mother and father if we don't have children. He's like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. She goes, thank you. He goes, well, I have one question, though. She goes, uh-huh. He goes, what are children? And she goes, oh, yeah, I have no idea either. So we should probably create the first children. And they go, ooh, that's a good idea. Let's create the first children. He goes, oh, have you taken that wellness class yet where they explain the thing that gets all awkward and creepy? She goes, no, I've not taken that class either. He goes, well, how about we just awkwardly make eye contact and yell babies and see what happens? And she goes, for this story, I think that's a wonderful idea so it doesn't get more creepy than it already is. And they go, okay. So Mother Earth and Father Sky make loving eye contact with each other and just go, babies. And out pop the very first babies ever to be born. Now, here's the problem. For those of you who have composition class, or you have a class where you had to write a paper, what do you call that very first version of the paper? Rough draft. So that's sort of what this would be. These are called rough draft babies. That's what the firstborn always is in a family. They're the rough draft. And then you have the other babies until eventually you get it correct. Now, I say that as the oldest child in my family, but in Greek mythology, it definitely worked because they were not good at this whole creating a new baby thing. So out pop these new babies, and they've never made children before. So these first babies that are born, and it's going to be this really long name, so don't worry about it yet. Their official name were the Hecatonochires. I'm never going to refer to them as the Hecatonochires because that is their official name, but not their common name. Their common name was either hundred-handed monsters, but that's not a whole lot shorter. But literally in Greek, the hecaton meant 100. Shire meant handed. They were called the hundred-handed monsters because they had 100 hands. The other name that we're going to refer to them is the big ugly monsters because they were big, they were kind of ugly, and they were monstrous. So when they're born, they are 3 males, and they just come rising straight up out of the ground. Come screaming up. They are going to be the largest creatures to ever exist in the existence of Greek mythology. The only thing larger than them are going to be Mother Earth herself and Father Sky. No other thing will ever exist bigger than them. When they come up out of the ground, each one has 50 heads and 100 arms and just 2 legs. And luckily, I have done research and I have found photographs of them from this time period to sort of help you visualize what they were supposed to be. So these are photographs of them from that time period. And these were the Hecatonochires, or the big ugly monsters. And yes, they had individual names because Mama Earth loved them deeply. And you don't just call them child 1, child 2, and child 3. So you give them individual names. I'm not making you know the individual names. Their names were Coltis, Gyges, and Briareus. It's just that I have kids ask, so I went ahead and put it up there for you. Just know big ugly monsters and you're good to go. So they come rising up out of Mother Earth. Mother Earth immediately takes a look at them and thinks they're the most adorable things in the entire universe. She's like, oh my God, look at them. And she Gucci goos all over their chins. Gucci, 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 Gucci. 150 heads later, Gucci, goo. They're like, again. She's like, no. And so she loves it. And they slap their heads because that's how big ugly monsters talk. Like, whack, 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 and they yell at her. And she thinks they are perfect. Father Sky looks at them. He's like, hey, look at them. And he throws up all over Mother Earth. He's like, what did you? He's like, oh God, look at those things. And he turns around and has to face out into space. He's like, listen, we're going to have a talk. And she's like, what do you mean? He goes, those things are horrifying. He goes, I looked at him and I threw up and I've never eaten anything before. It's like, that shouldn't be physically possible. She's like, oh, they're lovely and adorable. Father Sky loves Mother Earth. She goes, all right, listen, we'll compromise. How about this? We'll let them exist and I'll just never look at you again. And I'll just look off into space for the rest of forever. And as long as I never see them, I won't have to throw up. And Mother Earth is like, okay, I love them. Father Sky's like, okay, then I guess that works. And he turns around and just faces off into space so he no longer has to see them. And the big ugly monsters run around on Earth having a great time, just going, black, 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 speaking monster-ese and having a good time. The problem is they're 3 boys. You might not know. You saw this was going already. You might not know this. Boys don't always make good person choices. So one day, as it's not us yet, and they're going down, as the A1's leaving. So one day, the big ugly monsters are running around on Earth, and they start picking up mountains and throwing them at each other. You know, as you do when you're a giant monster. And when they do, it starts making lots of noise, like roar, and they throw it. And then it's like, and it hits him in the chest, and it hits the ground, and it makes enough noise. It distracts Father Sky, and he turns around. He's like, hey, what are you kids doing? He's like, yeah. And it happens often enough that Father Sky gets fed up with all this. He's like, you know what? I thought I could handle just looking off into the space and not seeing the big ugly children down there, but I'm going to have to solve this problem. So Father Sky decides to solve the issue. So he rolls up his sleeves. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Reaches out his giant sky hand and scoops out a giant chunk of Earth. And then goes, look, kids, we call this a hole. And the kids go like, wah, 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 wah. They'll go over to the hole, and Father Sky goes, dunk, 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 and pushes all 3 kids into the hole, slams the dirt back on top, and then quickly pats it back down and goes, we're never going to talk about that again. and he gets rid of all 3 children into this place called Tartarus, Tartarus, which is a place deep underground inside of Mother Earth. Mother Earth, not happy about any of this, but she doesn't have arms, so she apparently can't do anything about it. So she raged. You're trying to use logic. So she's upset about it, but there's nothing that can happen. So at this point, Father Sky has now gotten rid of that first group of children and buried them deep away and says, we're never going to talk about that mistake again. Mother Earth and Father Sky continue to live for a while, and things are good. They're happy. They love each other. Except Mother Earth still misses that first set of children. She's like, you know what? Just because babies are ugly and make you throw up every day when you look at them doesn't mean they don't deserve love also. So Mother Earth confronts Father Sky. One day she goes, hey, hon. And he's like, I recognize that tone of voice. She's like, well, remember those baby things we had? He's like, we were talking about. She's like, I don't know. How about we try again? I've heard a phrase. And he's like, well, what phrase? She goes, practice makes perfect. And he was like, I don't know if I agree with that one. She's like, well, those were practice babies. Everyone knows that about the firstborn. The second one's going to be the much better one. And I was like, all right, fine. I'll agree to the second set of children. But I'm telling you now, if they turn out to be ugly and I throw up when I look at them, I'm just going to go ahead and throw them off the edge of the earth. And she was like, okay, I agree. You can throw away our babies if they're ugly. I mean, who hasn't had that conversation? And so they decide to go ahead and have the second set of children. So Mother Earth and Father Sky get together. He goes, oh, did you ever take that class? She's like, no. He's like, wiggle fingers? He's like, wiggle fingers it is. And so again, they make awkward eye contact. They go, babies. Then out pops the second set of children. This set of children, much smaller in comparison. Where if you had the big ugly monsters were the size of a person, this next set of babies would come up to like the kneecap. So about that tall in comparison size-wise. So still really big, but still much smaller than the big ugly monsters. And again, we're still sticking with boys so far because apparently boys are easy to make. Girls take both thought and effort. They're like boys, but with a brain. So we've not gotten that far into it yet. So we make 3 boys again. And this time, Father Sky has his eyes closed. He's like, I'm not looking yet. And up they pop. Bloop, bloop, bloop. 3 more sons are born to Mother Earth and Father Sky. And Father Sky goes, describe them to me. Mother Earth was like, they're adorable. He's like, I fell for that last time. He was like, I need a better description. She's like, well, they're smaller. He's like, oh, that's a good start. She's like, they have 2 arms each. He's like, oh, that's much better. She's like, they have 1 head each. He's like, well, that's much better. And 1 mouth and 1 nose and 1 eyeball right in the middle of their head. And he's like, well, that sounds mildly creepy, but I'm in it because the second set of children are the cyclops. And so this is how the cyclops are born and they come into the world. So Father Sky uncovers his eyes and he looks down and he's like, those things aren't bad. He's like, they're mildly creepy, but kind of adorable at the same time. He's like, I think we're going to keep them around. And again, I've done my research. I have found pictures of them. For those of you who want to know what they look like, so in case you want to write them letters, those are the 3 Cyclops brothers. And again, they have actual names. So their names were Argus, Brontes, and Steropes. Not names you have to know, just keeping you in the loop for this whole namey name thing. So the 3 of them pop up. And Father Sky goes, you know what? He tells the 3 Cyclops, y'all aren't horribly ugly, so I think we're going to keep you. And the Cyclops like, what do you mean keep us? He's like, shh, don't worry about it. Squidkins.
The ugly monsters also only have
50 heads and 100 hands. Correct.
Oh, not 100.
No, take what you have and then multiply it by 50. So 1 head times 50 is 50. 2 arms times 50 is, I did not think it was that challenging. Yes, it's going to be 100.
Take what she has for 50. Didn't she have 100 heads? 50 has 100 heads. Oh my God.
Take what you have times 50. Yeah, I thought the same thing, but I was trying not to say it. So now we have the cyclops in existence, and everything is perfect and nothing bad happens ever again, period, until we come back from lunch. But for now, I figure we'll stop on a happy note with everything being perfect and good and loving. So we're going to go to lunch before we have to worry about anything bad happening, and just imagine that the world is a good place right now. And then we'll come back and check on you. All right. Pause. And we're back. We left off. Well, for those of you who are watching the video, we didn't leave off at all. It was like all of a blink of an eye. For the rest of us, we have food in our systems and happy bellies, much like some of the gods after they have babies. Yes?
Can I put these on your desk?
Is your name on them?
Yeah.
Sure.
Wait.
So now we have the cyclops who are now existing. This is the second set of children, and everything is wonderful and good. Turns out the cyclops develop an ability that they're the only beings to ever have. They can reach into Mother Earth, pull out metal with their bare hands, and shape it. They become the best metal shaping creatures to ever exist. Sort of like Hephaestus with his forge, but they can do it with their bare hands, which becomes incredibly impressive. This even entertains Uranus as he watches the... So imagine we have three brothers who are immortal and cannot die and have the ability to create any weapon that they want to. What do you think they spend their time doing? Yeah, attacking and hurting and killing each other. And so that's what the three Cyclops brothers decide to spend almost all of their time doing. The first one to figure it out, like reaches in the earth, pulls out a chunk of metal, like squishy, 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 sword. Bye. And he cuts off. He's like, alert! And they start running around and chasing each other and doing the stabby, stabby stuff. Uranus sees all this happen, and he thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. He's like, you guys are highly entertaining. You should definitely keep stabbing and killing each other because it's like the best TV show right here in front of you. And things continue on like this for a while. Till one day, one of the brothers is chasing down the other one, and he's doing the classic technique where you run off the top of a mountain so you can surprise your brother and then jump down and like cut him in half. He's like, I got you. So he runs up at the top of the mountain, grabs his giant sword, jumps off the top of the mountain as his brother's crossing underneath of him so he can go down and chop him in half. When he swings his sword, he hits a thing that's above him. And that thing above him would be... And he chops right across Uranus and cuts across Uranus. Uranus, who's laughing and thinking, he's like, ha, this, ow! Which one of you cut me? They all like, oh, and they all point to each other. Uranus goes, listen, this was all hilarious when you were attacking each other. But as soon as you stab your father, you're going to make him upset. So no more stabbing daddy. Again, conversations I'm sure you've all had too. He goes, listen, if you stab me again, I'm going to make you go meet your older brothers. Like, you have older brothers? He's like, uh-huh. If you keep stabbing me, you're going to meet them. Like, okay, daddy. And so can things continue along? Things are going well. The kids settle down. Till one day, one of them figures out how to make a spear. And he's running after and chasing one of the other brothers who's running up a hill. And he's going to pin his brother to the ground with the spear. He's going to throw it and like a thunk. He's like, I can't get away. And you like chop him up into little pieces. Great trick. So he's running after his brother, grabs the spear, hurls it as hard as he can. It's like, wugga, 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 wugga. The brother turns, sees it coming, does the classic dodging technique. Woo! Spear goes flying right past him. And he laughs. He's like, ha, 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 you missed. Realizes what happened when the spear missed him. Where does the spear go?
Uranus.
Straight into Uranus, who's sitting up there just watching TV, kicking back on his little lazy boy. And he's like, oh, it's on TV? Ah! He's like, is that a spear? He looks down at the kid's like, Bobby did it. And they point over to him, and Father Sky goes, that's it. I'm done with you. He rolls up his big sky sleeves, reaches out, scoops out a giant scoop of Mother Earth, and opens up Tartarus again. And again, we look down there and we see all the big ugly monsters. Father Sky grabs a chunk of metal, throws it into the pit. And he goes, look, children, metal. And they go, whoa, where did it? He goes, dunk, 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 and pushes all three Cyclops in, smashes the earth back on top of them, and makes them disappear. So the three Cyclops get closed away into the pit of Tartarus, never to be seen again until later in the story. So now we're back down to just Mother Earth and Father Sky. and things continue well, except Mother Earth is a little on the sad side because she misses those original babies. And one day, she goes up to Father Sky and she goes, "Hey, hon, I thought we should have a talk." And he's like, "What's going on this time?" She's like, "Remember the first set of kids?" He's like, "She's like, I don't. Remember the second set of kids?" He's like, "I don't." Well, okay. I was talking to some friends and they introduced me to a phrase. He was like, "What friends? We're the only." He's like, "Shh." So the phrase they told me about was third time's a charm. And I believe that works with children also. So everyone knows the third child is going to be the best one. He was like, "Oh, are you kidding?" He's like, "I think we should have another set of babies." He goes, "Listen, we're done after this. One more set of babies, and then I'm retiring. No more babies after that." She's like, "Okay, I agree." He's like, "And if they're ugly babies, I throw them off the edge of the world." She's like, "No uggos." He's like, "If they stab me, I throw them off the edge of the world." She's like, "No stabby babies." He's like, "As long as we can agree to that, I'm in." She's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Hey, wait, have you taken that class?" She's like, "I'm not taking that class." He's like, "Wiggle fingers." He's like, "Wiggle fingers." They go, "All right." They roll the hand. Like, babies. And out pop the third set of babies. Now, this time, Mother Earth has put a whole lot of work and effort into it. And she's decided to have these things called backup babies. So instead of 3 babies or 6 babies or 9 babies, she's like, "I'm going to have 12 babies."
Oh, no.
Because that way, nothing can go wrong. And if some of them mess up, we just get rid of those babies and we have the other backup babies. And things are great. And she decides to invent something new called girls. They're like boys, but you put effort into them and give them brains. And she's like, "This is like the perfect solution." This third set of babies are even smaller in comparison to the cyclops. They come up like little cyclops as ankle bones. So they're small compared to the cyclops, tiny in comparison to the big ugly monsters. And the 12 of them come shooting up out of the earth like popcorn, like pew, 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 pew. Again, Father Sky has his eyes closed. Mother Earth immediately says, "Oh my God, they're so adorable. I love them so much." Father Sky's like, "Yeah, still not falling for that woman. Describe them to me." And she's like, "Well, they're kind of small." He's like, "Uh-huh, keep going." She's like, "Man, 2 legs." He's like, "I'm with you." She's like, 2 arms. She's like, "Okay." 1 head. And he's like, "Oh, I'm in so far." He's like, "Wait, how many eyeballs?" She's like, 2 eyeballs on each one. He's like, "Ooh, I'm intrigued. That's twice as good as the other ones." This third set of babies are going to be called the Titans. And this is where our 12 Titans come in. Mother Earth comes up with 6 boys and 6 girls. They essentially look like large people. And again, here are your pictures of the 12 Titans. And again, I have names for them. This was the names of the original 12 Titans. You don't need to know the names of them except for the 2 in red. Cronus and Rhea are going to pop up again in our story. The other 10, not so much. Just know that they exist, know that they have names, and that's the only really important thing there. Father Sky uncovers his eyes, looks at him, and is like, "Huh, oh, they're almost adorable." He's like, "They're kind of bite-sized." He's like, "What?" He's like, "That's later in the story." He goes, "All right." So he then takes a giant chunk of metal, slams it down in front of him. He's like, "Hey, do something with that." They're like, He's like, "Oh, great. They can't do anything with metal. I don't throw up when I look at them." He's like, "These are definitely keeper children." "I guess you're right. The third set was the good set." Right.
So I looked at the imagery and I noticed that our emphasis is often the first of its kind. Lots of children look at this.
Yep.
I know why it's fun.
Yeah.
I found that worth noting.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. So now we have the 12 gods, and Mother Earth and Father Sky, for the most part, are pretty happy. Soon after the 12 Titans are born, one of the first things they decide to do is they want to build a temple, a castle to worship Mom and Dad. So they can have an easy location to talk to them. So they go, "We want to find a place that is going to be really close to Father Sky, but still in contact with Mother Earth." So where can you go to find a place that still's touching Mother Earth, but is really close to the sky? on a mountain. So that's what they end up doing. So they end up finding one of the tallest mountains they can, going up to the top of it, and there they build this place up on top of a mountain. What do we call this place?
Mount Olympus.
This is where Mount Olympus comes in. And so these first 12 Titans build that so they can then be close to both mom and dad at the same time. Tartarus still exists down here. All of the ugly monsters and the cyclops are still down there. And now we have Mount Olympus up there. Each of the original 12 Titans, each creates their own throne. They get to design their own chair. They get to sit in whenever they want to go talk and pray to mom and dad and stuff like that, which is why there can only be a certain number of Olympians at any one time. And what's the maximum number of Olympians?
12.
Because of these 12 thrones. So later on, when Zeus takes over, he just takes over Olympus, but already has those 12 thrones, which is why we're always stuck with 12 as our number of Olympians, because of these original thrones from these original gods. And they end up ruling up there, and things go wonderfully for years. Till one day, you see how these transitions often. Mother Earth calls all the 12 Titans up to Mount Olympus. And they all come up. They're just like, hey, kids, I think we should have a talk. And they're like, well, what's going on, Mom? She goes, well, I've been talking to some friends, and they introduced me to a new term that I think applies to you guys. And they go, okay, what is it? She goes, have you ever heard of the term grandbaby? And they're like, we have not. What are grandbabies? She's like, I think they're like babies, but grander. And I think we have to start making grandbabies. She goes, it's going to require, and she looks at the male Titans, you guys are going to have to get married so that I can start getting me some grandbabies. And the 6 male Titans like, all right, Mom, we love you. We're going to get married. We're going to give you grandbabies. So the 6 male Titans like, all right, let's get hitched. And they start looking around. They start joining dating websites, and they realize that on the dating websites, there's only 6 other women on the dating website, because who is it they can marry? Their sisters. So each of the brothers finds the hottest sister, and they get married, and they start making grandbabies. And they name this new land Alabama. And so this is where they start then populating all of this entire. I don't know how they tell the story in Alabama. Where else do they get to make fun of? I kind of feel bad for those Alabamians. And so now we have the fact that we have all of these new children are being born, and then those grandbabies start finding other grandbabies and making these things called great grandbabies, and it starts trickling down where we start filling the entire planet with Titans. It starts off dozens, and then hundreds, and then thousands. We still have the original 12 living up there on Mount Olympus. Sorry, hiccup. Living up there on Mount Olympus, but we now have all of these other ones that are out there, and things are going well. So here are the 12 Titans that are now living out there, and things are going wonderfully. Except for Mother Earth. Mother Earth eventually starts to get sad. She's really happy that she has babies now, and grandbabies, and great-grandbabies. But deep in her Mother Earth heart, she still misses something. What does she miss? She's like, you know what? Grandbabies are adorable, but I still miss my ugly babies and my violent stabby babies. And I want to have my stabby babies and my uggo babies back. But someone's standing in the way of that. Who's preventing her from having back her uggo babies? Uranus. So when you want to have your ugly babies returned to you and your husband says no, how do we solve this problem? I like how you guys problem solve. What? My husband's back talking to me. Kill him! You're correct. So she decides that she is going to kill Uranus. And that is how she is going to get her babies returned to her. Problem is, she doesn't have any arms. And it's really hard to assassinate somebody when all you can do is like, and you run at them. All they do is giggle and laugh at you. So she decides that her killing him is not going to work. So she decides to hire the very first assassin. So Gia starts having tryouts for the very first assassin. Now, there's not a whole lot of people out there to choose from, so she decides to go back to those very first original 6 male Titans. And she calls in the first Titan brother, who is considered the oldest one, and she calls him in. And she's like, I think you and I need to have a talk. And he's like, yeah, Mom, what's up? She's like, have a seat. He does. She's like, so, honey boo, what are your thoughts on becoming king of all the gods? He's like, oh my God, it'd be awesome. I'd love to be king. Wait, isn't Dad king of all the gods? And she's like, yes, he is. Funny story. What are your thoughts on, hang on, killing your father? He's like, I don't want to kill Dad. I love my dad. She's like, oh, JK, that was a test. You passed. Can you send in your brother, please? And so she goes through each one and has the next brother come in, has the same conversation. He also turns her down. She goes through 5 brothers until she calls in the youngest one. Like, how can you have the youngest if they're born? I have no idea, but he's always referred to as the youngest one. And so she calls in the youngest brother, Cronus, and he comes into the room. She's like, hey, by this point, she's worn out. She's like, what are your thoughts on becoming king of all the gods? She's like, I would love it. That'd be great. He's like, I know, but your father. He's like, yeah, what about that? He's like, you'd have to kill him, but you probably was like, okay, shoot. What was that? He's like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm not busy right now. She's like, whoa, okay, Tiger, I'm in. He's like, this is great. Okay, so you agree to kill your father? He's like, yeah, if I get his job, that sounds like the best thing ever. And she's like, great. Okay, so we're in. So she decides to come up with a plan to kill Uranus using Cronus. She goes, all right, here's the plan we're going to come up with. I want you to wait until he comes down to give me a hug, because it was thought that Uranus would come down to give her a hug every single day. Do you know what time of day that would be? Sunset. Is correct. Sunset. Because it was thought that's when the sky came down to Mother Earth for a hug. So she goes, wait for a sunset, and then you're going to jump up and attack him. He's like, do I like punch him and like bite onto his ears and stuff like that? She's like, no, no, no. I'm going to create for you a special weapon called a scythe. Scythe. She's like, but it's going to be made out of a special metal called adamantium. And for those of you who are Marvel superhero fans, adamantium is what was on Wolverine, the guy with the claws and the schnickety. So they use that same metal from Greek mythology in the Marvel comics. And so adamantium from Greek mythology is what covers his skeleton and his sneaky claws. He goes, all right, I'm going to give you this scythe. She's like, I'm going to give you a special scythe made out of adamantium. Like this one is definitely made out of adamantium. Really expensive. Definitely did not cost $6. And so she says, what I'm going to have you do is you wait till he comes down, and then you jump up and you just start wailing on him and just stabbing him. And he's like, that'll kill him? She goes, no, he's a god. You can't kill him that way. He's like, well, then what? She's like, what you're going to do is just stab him a whole bunch, because the adamantium is strong enough to pierce his skin. And if you stab him enough, he's going to run away from you. And you're going to chase him all the way to the edge of the earth, and then he's going to jump off, and that's how we get rid of him. He's like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. Like that. She's like, all right, I agree. He's like, all right. So he goes and he grabs his little adamantium scythe and goes and hides and waits for that night. That night, Father Sky comes down, and Kronos all of a sudden just pops up. He's like, what's your name? He's like, hey, Dad, how you doing? Kronos like, oh, hi, son. You're looking kind of creepy right there. Kronos like, he's like, what's behind your back? He's like, he's like, just a really sharp, pointy stick. And Uranus is like, okay, well, I'm gonna just go that way really fast because you're creeping me out. And Kronos is like, and then runs after him, just swinging. He's like, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you. And Uranus runs as fast as he can away from Cronus. Much like in Super Mario Brothers, Cronus keeps jumping off the tops of mountains and cutting into his father with the scythe. He's like, boing, choppy, choppy, boing, choppy, choppy. And every time that he goes choppy, choppy into Uranus, chunks of Uranus come flying off. Whenever these chunks fly off, they land down on Earth and create new beings. Some are going to become gods, some become creatures, some become monsters. They're going to pop up throughout all of Greek mythology, referring to this event here. And Uranus keeps saying, ow, it hurts, ow, it hurts. And so eventually he chases Uranus to the edge of the Earth. And as he keeps coming at him, the Kronos like, choppy, 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 choppy. And right before he gets to the choppy, choppy, Uranus has backed up. So his feet on the very edge of the earth, and he's doing the wiggle arm thing, wiggle arm, wiggle arm, wiggle arm, wiggle arm. And Kronos comes in for the final killing blow. And as it comes down, Uranus goes, wait! And Chris goes, what? He goes, before you kill me, I have something for you. So I was like, oh, I love presents. What is it? And Uranus reaches into his pocket and pulls out a curse and throws it at him and says, I curse you, my child, because you are my kid and you are overthrowing me. I curse you so that you shall be overthrown by one of your children. And that child shall be overthrown by one of their children. And as long as my blood sits on the throne, you shall be overthrown by one of your own children if you go through with this. And Kronos was like, no, not a curse. What am I? I don't care. And jumps at his father to stab him. At the last second, Uranus turns and jumps off the edge of the earth, disappearing forever, never to be seen again in all of Greek mythology. Some stories say that he just disappears and floats away. Some say that he just like blinks out of existence. But however you look at it, he does not show up in any of this again. Cronus now declares himself the new king of all the gods. And everything is perfect and happy, and nothing bad ever happens again until next week. And that's where we're going to stop for today, because we talked about killing fathers. And is that not the best place to stop after killing a father? You're wondering what happens with the sky dying? We'll come back to the sky dying. There's all kinds of logic issues all throughout that one. Yeah, yes, because Uranus was made out of chickens. JC, my adamantium side worth $6? Probably just a moment. I'm gonna. And technically, it was falling, like chunks that were coming down. Home children, we're gonna go to the library now, so I'm gonna have to let you go. I know it's sadness. Rush, I can't tell if you got freaked out or you have a question.
I have one last question. How do you spell the weapon that they used?
SCYTHE. SCY, the. And then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. All right, so I'm going to end the toodles. Indy.